Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome back to the Think Factory podcast, powered by OGC Solutions. I'm Chris Santomassimo, your host today, and I'm excited to introduce a very interesting guest today. This is Dave Lewis, who's the president of SnailWorks, which is based in Frederick, Maryland. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here.
So Dave is, to say that Dave is informed about how the Postal Service works and how they're performing and how his clients are, dealing with the Postal Service would be an understatement. He's a guy that seems to know, thanks to all the customers he works with and the data he accumulates, can basically tell you what the heartbeat of the Postal Service seems like on any given week. This is really the reason that I invited you today. Was I find it super interesting, and I'm sure your customers do too. This analysis that you do to not only help, and the services you provide also to help customers track their mail, but all of the data that you're able to accumulate and aggregate about the Postal Service operations, to me, is just super interesting. So that's the reason we're together today. So if hopefully that was a good intro, Dave, but I'd love for you to introduce SnailWorks and your background in the industry as well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And I've been I don't like to admit how long I've been in the industry, but it's been a long time. My first postal forum was in 1981 in Pittsburgh, so it's been a few years in the mailing business. And I kind of ran through I worked in mail houses, part ownership of some mail houses, and finally back in 2000, the Postal Service came out with this program called back then it was called Planet Codes. It was a way of tracking mail through the post office. I said, well, that's interesting. Our clients would be interested in that. And as we got into it, we said, well, this is really tough data to work with. So it's essentially every time a piece of mail goes through a sorting machine at the post office, you get a record. And so we started accumulating that, and we built this system. The company we had back then was called Track My Mail, which was a mail tracking company. We grew that and sold it off to Pitney Bowes in 2007, I think it was. And then I kind of got back into the mailing business for a little while. And then in 2012, we started SnailWorks. And SnailWorks really, we tried to make it the next step, which is we're taking mail tracking information. We can see where each piece of mail gets delivered and when it gets delivered, and to use that to trigger other marketing events and sort of make it a more active service for people so they could take advantage of this mail tracking. And as part of this, other things came about. We track a lot of mail. Last year we tracked probably about 4.5 billion pieces of mail.
Wow.
And it continues to grow. So it's if I could just get $1 a piece, I'd be in good shape. But but we do track a lot, and so we started in addition to certainly letting our clients know when and where their mail is being delivered, which they can share with their customers and get lots of use from. We also built this analytics database where we take all this data and we track how long it takes mail to get from point A to point B all over the country. Every Monday we publish on LinkedIn a U.S. mail traffic report where we just kind of do a quick overview. And that's been, it's a lot of people see that. I know all the postal regulatory commissioners read that every week. So we get a little bit of influence because we probably have more information on how long it takes mail to get delivered and how the Postal Service is performing really than anyone, but I guess the Postal Service themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear you describe, how your customers are going to use that data for their operations.
Yeah, and it really depends on, again, now our customers are generally, mail service providers and printers who sell to end users. And so their customers may be nonprofits, it may be banks, anyone who does a lot of mail. And knowing when their mail gets delivered, first of all, there's just the peace of mind that your mail is being delivered. It costs a lot of money. You want to make sure it's getting there. But even more so, we see people preparing their call centers, because when the mail gets delivered has a lot to do with when they get calls. And if you mail a couple million pieces of mail, you get a lot of phone calls. And if the mail didn't get delivered today, if it's getting delivered tomorrow, you sort of want to make sure you have your your call center staffed appropriately. We have people who coordinate other marketing channels with it. So when the mail gets delivered, they may trigger an email to give someone another look at the offer, another chance to respond. Again, there's a lot of people are looking for delivery issues or the delivery problems to try to optimize delivery by maybe changing where they enter the mail or how they process it. And so having objective information on what is getting delivered is very important to them.
I'm thinking of it from a compliance standpoint too. If you've got contractual obligations to your clients in terms of, when pieces are going to get delivered or approximately so, you got to be able to know how far in advance do I have to print and put it in the mail in order to meet those deadlines and those service levels.
Absolutely, and that's certainly we encourage. We always the analytics we have are great, but we always tell people that the only mail that really matters is their own, and so that's they should make sure they track their own as well. That's all. Every mail has its own characteristic of how long it may take.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and especially if it's time sensitive, either because of a regulatory reason, like banks, for example, have got obligations, or because you have a time sensitive marketing offer that you want your customers or your clients' customers to see by a certain date. Of course, you got to make sure it's going to get there at the right time.
Yeah, and one nice thing about the system we see a lot of application to is not only does it tell you when it gets delivered, but it tells you when it gets mailed. And that's a big deal for some people. If you have if you have 10 customers and using 5 different mail houses and you want to keep account, then you can see when the mail enters the system objectively through the system. So a lot of people, they're more interested in when it ggets mailed than when it gets delivered.
Interesting.
As well as proving they mailed it again in terms of compliance, that can be important.
Well, that frankly, in a typical direct mail services contract, that's really the issue is when did you put it in the mail?
Yep.
Right. But as an expert in the industry, I'm going to say that many of the the customers that go to that to go to a certain printer are going to rely on that printer to decide, do I need 4 days or 6 days or 5 days, whatever it's going to be, depending on the type of mail you're sending. And so especially when it comes to direct mail advertising, the print house is going to be the one that is going to give the advice about, when should this stuff be in the mail.
No, they need to have that expertise for their customers. That's expected of them.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and it's a data-driven industry and a data-driven service, and you're the one that provides the data. So I'm sure that your customers are kind of impatiently waiting for those reports on a periodic basis to, know what's going on in the market generally. In fact, in that regard, what are you seeing in terms of the Postal Service operations, and especially, with the recent changes, the Postmaster General retiring, new one coming on board? What are you seeing in the Postal Service overall?
Oh, it's there's a couple of viewpoints on. There's certainly since Louis DeJoy was the Postmaster General back in 2020, I believe it was, that he joined. Sadly, every year during his administration, the Postal Service got a little bit slower every year. It was really kind of hard to watch. And I always like to stress that the wheels didn't come off the bus. They were still delivering mail for the most part in a reasonable amount of time. It's just that there was this general slowdown in those few years. It took on average about a day longer for a piece of mail to get delivered overall. And that starts to have, and the service became less consistent. So, averages are averages, but sometimes, knowing exactly when individual mailings got delivered, it became a little more unpredictable. We've seen right now that we've had a new Postmaster General for a couple of months now. I don't think he's had much influence yet. He's still at least more or less sticking to the Delivering for America plan that DeJoy had put in place. So he hasn't really changed much in that respect. And we continue to see sort of things. The service that continue to deteriorate a little bit. Again, it's not dramatic. Also, there's just a lot of changes that have been made in regulations in the last year or so that have had a big impact on delivery. Sort of the way discounts are given out to mailers for where they take the mail. It changes mailer behavior. So now instead of dropping it at this one location, they may just drop it locally, so it may take longer to deliver it that way, and that changes the workloads across the whole postal service. So it's kind of funny how one thing affects another. When they change the rules, it has a lot of impact.
And what do you attribute, or at least do you have any idea where we can attribute some of that service reduction? What caused it, do you think?
Um, and I get asked that a lot, and I always try to say I don't have an opinion. I just give it, but I do have some opinion. I think part of I really do think, to some extent, part of the problem with the former Postmaster General is he made very clear that service was not his top priority. He wanted to bring profitability back. He wanted to control costs. But I think, but he was more. It was more important to him to have a full truck pull out than it was necessarily to, do things more quickly. And I think that, so I do think, and again, this is just my opinion, that sort of the culture of service faded a little bit. And I think that's part of it. Certainly they changed some of the routing and how things are moved, but I also think some of when the boss doesn't make service a priority, it's tough to inspire the people who deliver it as well. So I think that may have been part of it. And it is kind of funny, in the few months after he left, we did see service get better. A little bit, but it had been going downhill for a long time. So, and you just had to kind of laugh and say was that, nothing changed except he was gone. And you wonder maybe, did the culture somehow change because of that? That's again, it's a bit pure speculation on my part.
Interesting, but it's this converse relationship that you see between, costs and volume, for example, as postage costs seem to go up at least every 6 months. All of a sudden, you see a reduction in volume, which then impacts that ability to fill the trucks, right? And then you sort of have this weird sort of circular effect and this trickle down where when the service levels get worse and the price goes up, the volumes drop, and then you're sort of killing that other objective that was on DeJoy's dashboard, if you will.
Yeah, it's true, and one thing that they've had for as part of DeJoy, that with the two rate increases in their July increase, they started to put this new piece in called the density adjustment. And what the density adjustment was, every mail volume has been going down over the years, and the number of delivery points has been going up because people keep getting born and living in houses, and so they threw in this factor saying, well, since that's fewer pieces of mail per delivery, we're going to put this adjustment in that we raise postage more because of this density factor. And it's really kind of a death spiral when you think about it. The less mail there is, the higher the prices go. So the less mail there is. And, it's really, rates have gone up about 40% in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's really had a dramatic impact on that. I still think direct mail remains very strong. We've seen, volume, particularly in marketing mail, has stayed fairly consistent for the last few years. They sort of, swallow hard and pay the postage, even though it's higher.
Well, the value is still there at the end of the day, right? The tactile sensation and all of the reasons why direct mail is amazing as a marketing vehicle, for sure.
It's an irreplaceable channel. You don't need permission to deliver. The Postal Service, they're real good sports. If you put a stamp on it, they'll deliver it.
Right.
So it's very high ROI, a very good marketing channel. It's just, so the Postal Service. I kid with people, because when people are complaining about it, and I've worked with the Postal Service now for 30, 40 years, as a customer. And I say, and I mean this respectfully, by the way, I say they've always been terrible. They're just a different kind of terrible now. But and that's not, they have a challenging job and they've always been challenging. So it's just a different kind of challenging now. But fundamentally, they still deliver the mail. It still works.
Yeah, I mean, if you pull yourself out of the direct mail and transactional print industry for a second and just look at it as an objective observer, it is a hell of a tough job to think about sending a letter from New York to LA in an envelope and it actually does get there. I mean, and it gets delivered for the most part, short of some tragedy that might happen with
Oh,
a
it does. I mean,
truck accident or something, but it actually works.
no, the percentage of delivery is extremely high. I mean, mail, it's just very rare. Mail just doesn't disappear. It's very rare that it does. It might take a long time every now and then, but it'll get delivered, and that is a remarkable achievement because they do have constantly expanding delivery points. So yeah, my hat is off to the Postal Service. I know I nitpick because that's my job, but they still do an amazing job.
What do you see, if anything, when it comes to the issues of mail theft, mail fraud, anything that really pops up within your customer base in that area?
Yeah, my customers don't seem to be impacted by that as much. It's in fact, mail, it's a little bit of an advantage mail has right now, although there are, mail fraud's pretty expensive to do. It costs a lot of money to send out fraudulent mail, if you will. So I think the credibility of email and online marketing, even text these days, people are scared to respond. They're scared to click on a link. So the Postal Service still has that advantage. I think credibility-wise, they do very well. And in fact, the Postal Service has the program called Informed Delivery. We had discussed it a little before, which is where they send customers a picture of all the mail that's going to be in their mailbox that day in an email. And the open rate on that email and click-through rate is spectacular because it comes from the Postal Service, and people, trust the Postal Service, even in their email.
Yeah. Yeah, I think more than mail fraud, to your point, it's an expensive endeavor if you're going to do it. But theft of checks, theft of mail is something that pops up occasionally. But I would say, although I've seen and experienced, that kind of a situation, it's fairly rare, and it's a pretty minute percentage of the overall mail that's in the system.
Yeah. It's a very small percentage, and I do think there's some people, financial institutions in particular, that sort of run campaigns and commercials telling people to watch out for mail fraud. And really the safest way to do it is to bank online. And I think they may have some ulterior motives in encouraging people to bank online. Mail's more expensive for them, so banks prefer that. So I think maybe it's a little exaggerated by that industry.
Maybe, although on the other side of that coin, so to speak, the statute that was introduced, or the bill that was introduced back in 2023, just got reintroduced the other day to keep to allow consumers the opportunity and the option to continue to receive paper statements in the mail, as opposed to having to be forced into electronic delivery. So yeah. We'll see how that goes through the committee and through Congress.
As someone in the mailing industry, I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's I think I still like to, we live in this funny world where no one really pays me any money. It just goes into a computer somewhere. So I like having a piece of paper somewhere so I can show somebody that they really do have my money there.
And not have to print it yourself, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So what do you see maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, either within the printing industry as it applies to the Postal Service or postal operations? And what are your customers also talking about?
Yeah, well, I think like I said, volume has been fairly flat, and as a friend of mine says, flat is the new up in business. So volume stays strong. We haven't seen, certainly in our business, we continue to grow. And a lot of it is from our existing customers, so it's not just so I think people are still mailing. The Postal Service has some great promotions that they run. If you mail more mail this year than you did last year, you can get a 30% discount. Things like that have an impact on people. The Postal Service themselves, performance-wise, they've got some changes coming. It's always hard to predict where they'll go. I don't think it's going to be dramatic. I'm hoping they get a little bit better. The twice-a-year postage increases are very likely to go away. The Postal Regulatory Commission is really pushing to make it once a year. which would be great for the for all the software developers and things like that. Boy, is it difficult to switch that around every 6 months.
Oh yeah.
So it would be great. Your postage is still going to go up a lot. It's just that I kind of think that for this January, usually January and July they do the increases. I think there's a good chance that this January's increase will not happen because they'd rather save it for July when they can do a bigger increase.
Well, and I've also seen when it comes to those rate increases, you see these unnatural surges that lead up to the next increase, and then this trough of work afterwards, because everybody wants to sort of, front load it before the increase takes effect. I'm not even sure how smart that is, because it may not necessarily, be the best thing for your marketing campaigns, just based on the timing of it,
Because that's an interesting point, because one of the things that there's sort of the opposite effect is happening right now. The Postal Service, starting in October, has a promotion going on for catalogs. If you mail a catalog, they're going to give you a 10% discount on postage. And 10% is a big deal in postage. People get very excited about that.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't start till October 1st. And so, there's a lot of talk that, well, all the catalog people are going to print up their catalogs and hold them until October 1st to mail them. So we're going to get a big surge of catalogs. However, at least at my house, I'm getting a ton of catalogs every day. So I'm not sure. I think if you're going to the expense of printing a catalog, having a line of merchandise that you're selling, I'm not sure. Obviously, if you can wait a week, you probably will. But as far as, not mailing for a period of time before that just to get the 10% on postage, probably not. Still think the value of the catalog is more important than that.
Yeah, well, that's the point. I guess that's like everything in the business. You got to do a cost benefit analysis, of course, but do you want to chop off a month of sales just to save that 10% on postage? I'm not sure. It's going to work in all cases anyway, but well, bigger minds than ours will figure that out on a catalog by catalog basis.
I hope so.
Yeah. Anything else that's going on out there that's either good, bad, or just interesting?
Gosh, it's all interesting to me, but I live in a very boring little world of this stuff. But I think the same trends we've seen. People are trying to mail smarter, more personalization. In the printing world, inkjet has just said inkjet printing, it makes everything personalized. One of the things we're seeing a lot of right now is the rebirth of the QR code. And now with digital printing, as a lot of my customers are printing unique QR codes on each piece, so it's like a pearl. You have an individual QR code, so we're seeing that kind of thing. Right. The Postal Service has a lot of promotions again planned for next year, so I think those are the people always get kind of excited about those. We live our industry is very focused on shaving off cost wherever it can, so that's very important to them. But I don't see direct mail continues to be an irreplaceable channel. I think some of the competing channels like email in particular are struggling because for a lot of reasons they're overloaded. There's a lot of fraud that goes on. People are scared to click on things. So I'm still bullish on the mail.
I would say so, especially, I was about to say, especially in the, B to consumer, but even in the B2B world, I think it's still got the staying power for sure. So
absolutely.
Let's hope we're right on that, right? So, well, Dave, this has been a super interesting look at what you do and how you're helping customers, but in particular, what's going on in the Postal Service. Talk about, or just let people know how they can reach you.
Absolutely. Well, again, a few ways, really. I encourage people to follow us on LinkedIn. It's SnailWorks. If you look for us there, because every Monday we do put actually interesting information there on how delivery performance, just how the Postal Service is doing. Our website is snailworks.com. A lot of great resources on there, webinars and white papers and things like that, without even becoming a subscriber. And of course, you can always reach me too. We have our standard format. We are D Lewis. I'm D Lewis at snailworks.com. So always happy to hear from people.
Fantastic. Well, Dave, thanks so much for sharing your views, your experience, and again, giving us that sort of inside look at what's going on in the Postal Service. So thanks very much for an interesting chat today.
Been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
Great. And this again been Dave Lewis, the president of SnailWorks in Frederick, Maryland. I'm Chris Santomassimo, host of the Think Factory podcast, and we'll see you next time.